If you love liberty, declare your independence by signing the Shire Society Declaration at shiresociety.com.
An act relative to carrying a pistol or revolver on university systems and community college system property. Representative Stone. I got the card after you speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We're short 5 amendments here that they passed out. We don't have copies of them.
Well, we're not going to check on it right now, but...
Okay.
May I begin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, New Hampshire leaves the decision on whether carry is permitted on public campuses up to each school. No public college or university in New Hampshire permits carrying of firearms. 10 states now have provisions allowing the carrying of concealed weapons on public post-secondary campuses. Recent court cases have also overturned some long-standing system-wide bans of concealed carry on state college and university campuses. In 2012, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled that the University of Colorado's policy banning guns from campus violated the state's concealed carry law. In 2011, the Oregon Court of Appeals overturned the Oregon University system's ban on guns. You may hear today that allowing this bill will result in increased violent crime on campus. However, since 2006, no state that allows campus carry has seen a resulting increase in gun violence because of legalizing carry. Virtually every peer-reviewed study on this subject, including studies by the National Academy of Sciences and the Harvard Injury Control Research Center, have concluded that there is no correlation between allowing concealed carry and an increase in violent crime or gun deaths. This won't increase suicide rates either. Studies show that 90% of suicides occur at home. Most students with firearms are generally over 21 years old, and most students that are 21 and over live off campus. The bill's impact on suicide would be close to nil. There's also no study that proves such a correlation, as to be an accurate study would require a randomized controlled trial, and we can't do that for suicide. This wouldn't distract from learning, as firearms must be concealed in this bill. We're not going to have someone snap and go on a shooting spree either. A Secret Service study regarding school shootings found that shooters do not simply snap. The individual has a downward spiral toward violence, usually accompanied by warning signs. A dangerous individual also isn't going to jump on someone with a gun. It would be concealed, so they wouldn't know. And even if they did know, there are far easier ways for criminals to obtain firearms. Another issue I'd like to address is dorm rooms. The odds of theft are not an excuse to ban firearms on campus. There are numerous options to secure weapons, such as gun safes and community lockups like the one the UNH Police Department currently has. Again, most people with firearms probably aren't living on campus as stated before. For example, Texas allows carry on campus. Out of the 50,000 students at the University of Texas, only 5 concealed carriers live on campus. Next, there's the issue of negligent discharges. While this is always a risk with firearms, the very few negligent discharges on campuses that permit carry were due to someone showing their weapon to somebody. We don't have this problem with concealed carry. According to the CDC, only 2% of firearm deaths are accidental, and those are mostly from hunting accidents. Some might say that concealed carry is unlikely to stop mass shootings on campus. However, there's no way for us to know that. What should be remembered is that carry is about personal protection, not public protection. Just because everyone might not enjoy its benefits doesn't mean it should be denied to those who wish to protect themselves. Some might also say in an active shooter scenario, they would only make things worse. As a former police officer and military veteran, I can't think of anything worse than allowing execution-style massacre to continue uncontested. Most exchanges of gunfire are a few seconds, 10 seconds max. This is far less than the minutes of shooting of innocents by an active shooter. I'm not suggesting that these individuals be charged with protecting campuses. We have police for that, but they should have a fighting chance of self-defense. Half of 37 campus shootings looked at by the Secret Service were resolved before police showed up, where the shooter killed himself or was stopped by an unarmed teacher or student. Concealed carriers don't need months of police or tactical training to defend themselves. Most of this training is about learning how to be cops. It's not about basic markers. It's very little of the training. In a real-life shootout, the gunfight is over like it's in a few seconds. It's not realistic to expect the police to arrive at an ongoing shootout. If they did, they're trained to expect good and bad guys. Police shouldn't be shooting anyone innocent without positive identification. Someone defending themselves is unlikely to go running around buildings with a gun raised searching for someone to find. Colleges are also areas of tense debate on occasion, but so are many other places where carry is allowed, such as this building. Many said in states before shall issue permits were issued, for example, that there would be shootings over parking spaces. It's a ridiculous argument. The same students already carry everywhere else in the state, if not on campus already. No less should be accepted of our citizens just because they cross the imaginary line onto a public college campus. Another argument I've heard a lot before I came here today is that alcohol is consumed all the time by college students. This bill doesn't change who can have a gun. This bill doesn't make it easier for college students to obtain firearms. They already can. A lot of these parties happen off campus, where drinking occurs in bars where such carrying isn't generally restricted. Many of our schools pride themselves on prevention. However, let's remember that prevention and preparedness are not mutually exclusive concepts. Just because our campuses may be safe doesn't mean they're immune from crimes that occur everywhere else in the state. People carry concealed not because they expect or are looking for danger, but in case danger finds them, where they had no reason to expect it. And finally, Mr. Chair, I recall our free society always places the burden of proof on those seeking to deny a right, not the other way around. I'm happy to take questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gagnon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Stoll. Take my question. I looked at the original bill and the amendment that you proposed. The only difference that I see, correct me if I'm wrong, is in the original bill, carrying a pistol or revolver. In the amendment, it's carry a concealed pistol or revolver. Is that the only change that's been made?
That's one of the changes. The other change is that it applies indoors and outdoors on the campuses.
What line is that one on?
Further question?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, what line would that be on in the amendment?
It's on, it's repeated twice in the amendment. What you want? Line 21, I believe.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm done.
I see no further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anna Brown.
Thank you for the testimony handout. Packets are large.
Could you suspend for a minute?
What?
We have the wrong sheet.
You have the incorrect bill numbers and
bill number
sign-up
on the
sheets.
sheet.
People
So
are
they're
unfortunately
Karen
signing on.
is committee assistant in the next office.
You're several bills behind according to this information. And people are signing in on the incorrect bill.
Well, I can't.
This needs to be remedied right away.
Well, I'm not the one to remember it.
Who would you like me to talk to?
My
Thank
vice
you very
chairman,
much, I
right
appreciate it. This is very important.
there. All right.
All right. Ready to go?
I am.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing my testimony. I'm here today on behalf of Citizens Count New Hampshire. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to making it easier for citizens to interact with their elected officials. We don't take any positions as an organization, but we do inform citizens about upcoming bills and invite them to share their comments on our website and Facebook page. On January 3rd, we asked our online community, should New Hampshire guarantee the right of gun owners to carry their weapons while outdoors on state college or university campuses? You'll notice that we added the phrase outdoors. That is different from the amendment submitted by Rep. Stones. That's a small difference. Using Facebook tools, we isolated responses from New Hampshire, and we're presenting the comments here today as a form of citizen testimony. This is not a poll, but it's intended to give a snapshot of opinions from New Hampshire residents who can't otherwise attend a hearing in person. So a total of 346 New Hampshire citizens participated in our discussion, and a large majority, 263, do support the bill. The packets include a copy of every comment we received if you want to go through them, and I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have next.
Well, given the volume of the material you sent in, I don't think I have any questions right now, but this is certainly helpful.
Well, I have just one small question.
Yes.
I think Rep. Stone passed this out.
Sure.
Yeah, is that in the packet?
It is, yes, that's a copy of the same information. So that's basically the summary where we go through and we, try to parse out the comments for you guys to get a snapshot, but we also in our packet are including the additional information.
Oh, it's the back, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go right to Paul Dean. Now, you put down 7 minutes. This is a 20-minute hearing, so we can't really do the 7 minutes. But I do have a question for you right off the bat.
Yes, sir.
How do you handle it now?
Well, sir, let me first explain who I am and my responsibilities here. My name is John Stevens. I am a trustee for the Community College System of New Hampshire, and I am also a former state police officer and commanding officer. In fact, I was the troop commander at Troop B here in Concord. During my stay as troop commander in Concord, I have responsibilities for all state buildings here in the Concord area, as well as NHTI. As a state police officer, 28 years with New Hampshire State Police, I am a reasonable and plausible supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe that there is a need for weapons, but I don't believe there's a need for weapons on college campuses. If there was to be a active shooter at NHTI or any college campus, it would be very hard to decipher who the good people were and who the bad people were with weapons on campus. So it really provides a very dynamic situation for law enforcement when they enter a college campus, if in fact there should be a active shooter. The other thing that I would say in regards to the college campus is that it's a dynamic environment. We have students, day students, we have students in dormitories, we have students that are having problems in school, out of school, and I would hate to think that they would bring those problems to that campus while carrying a weapon. In addition to that, we do have campuses, much like the university, that do have dormitories. And we have students staying in these dormitories throughout the week and over the weekends. We understand that, from time to time there may be parties taking place, there may be alcohol-induced, and God forbid there also may be drugs-induced as well. And to think that there would be weapons inside that dormitory, if in fact there should be an issue, becomes a real problem for law enforcement. I would really support an opportunity to have only licensed professionals carry weapons on college campuses to ensure that there is the safety and security of that campus being kept. With that, sir, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
First question is the number of students throughout the system. Some of them probably have carry licenses. In a case where someone brings a firearm onto the school grounds, into a classroom or whatever, how do you handle it?
Well, there are policies and protocols in place to ensure that students currently do not carry weapons onto the campus. And if in fact that was to be learned that a student had one, they would be asked to be removed and remove the weapon from campus.
Would there be any penalties?
Not if in fact the student agreed to the policies and procedures that were being followed at that point in time.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Questions? Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Dean. I'm the Chief of Police, Assistant Vice President for Public Safety. Excuse me, I'm battling a cold. risk management for the university system in New Hampshire. And I would encourage everybody to take a strong look at that bill, and we're absolutely opposed to it. And let me tell you why. We do allow guns on campus, but it's regulated. For instance, we house guns at the University Police Department for students that are in shooting sports, students who want to hunt. Our property is open to hunting. We have property throughout the state, and we have property within the town of Durham, the town of Lee, the town of Madbury, Farrington, that's open for hunting. And it's open for hunting for everybody, not just students. And they come and they seek a permit from me at the police department to hunt our property, and they get that. And so we have that. We're talking about a policy that restricts on the core of our campus where the daily educational mission takes place. I don't believe that that guns on campus are going to create that environment that we need to have a safe campus. In fact, UNH was ranked the #1 safest campus in the country this past summer. The town of Durham was ranked one of the safest communities in the country. We're doing things right. And we're providing for students' rights to have guns. We don't allow them in our dormitories, we don't allow them in our classrooms. But in speaking to what Trustee Stevens said, if a student has a gun and they're found, they're asked to remove that gun off campus. And that's what we do. And we've not had any incidents involving that. And I'm not foolish to think that we probably don't have people that are coming to our buildings, but I think the people respect that, and I think I think that it's working for that. Secondly, a college freshman is nothing more than a 2-month-old high school senior, and so we wouldn't be talking about having guns in our high schools. We should be thinking about that, and the same thing in our college campuses. The other issue is on mental health. There are issues with mental health on our campus. I just want to give you a couple of statistics. Our behavioral intervention team in the 2015-2016 school year handled 193 incidents that we would consider students in crisis. And many of those were transported to Portsmouth Regional Hospital Pavilion for observation and care. You know, adding a firearm to the mix, regardless of whether or not statistics show whether or not they would use that, do we want to add that to a mix in an already highly charged emotional area? And then we need to talk about alcohol, because alcohol is important when it comes to this issue. Alcohol is very important. We see students every single weekend who are really good kids make some really bad decisions on alcohol. And one bad decision with a gun in a room, the maybe not secured, because who's going to mandate that security? Are we going to require that there be gun safes in every college room just in case somebody wants to store a gun there? That has a fiscal bill with that, and that's costly. So,
can I ask you a question at that point?
Absolutely, sir.
I've been up to Plymouth several years ago, and I wanted to talk about the Second Amendment with the college students. And while I was there, and I talked to, I don't know his name now, who was had your position up there.
Steve Tempolino?
It might have been.
Yeah.
And he showed me where they keep the firearms for the kids who go hunting.
Yeah.
Do you have the same system? And
absolutely, sir.
So in other words, there's one central location and they're all there?
Yes, students know, and they can have access to it 24 hours a day.
Right.
It's not a perfect system, but it works, and we've not had any issues with that system with our students.
Good system.
Thank you.
Representative Panalaka.
Thank you, Chief, for taking my question. I'm a parent sending my son or daughter to the university. Are they all given the same policy book that he spoke of before they go?
They're provided that, ma'am, in their student rights rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Burt, Gagnon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions, if I may, sir. One is, I understand the University of New Hampshire's policy is the student will be expelled. Is that correct?
You can't just expel somebody from the University of New Hampshire. There's a due process. And I've never known anybody...
Having possession of a gun is an expulsion reason?
I don't know that to be fact, sir.
All right. The second is, do you believe that Virginia Polytech, when that massacre happened, was better off with the students disarmed, or if a student had a gun, could have stopped it quicker?
I don't know if I can answer that, sir, because I'm not there, and I wasn't part of that. What I do know is that having trained people responding are going to make the right decision. And taking the chance of having somebody there that's not trained, that doesn't know how to react in those stressful situations with a firearm, it could potentially create more of an issue, not only for that person who's trying to protect her, but for others around. Especially every round that comes out of that firearm, you need to be accountable for, and not knowing the training level of somebody, I just think that's a risk for the institution to have to take.
All right, thank you. Representative Gagnon. Next.
Representative Gagnon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question, Chief. If a parent, like Student Weekend or whatever they're called, is licensed to be armed and goes on the campus to visit his or her offspring, if they're found carrying, would they be thrown off the campus?
Well, first they'd have to be found, and I would suspect that if they're carrying their firearm concealed, they're probably not going to be found. But if they were found, we'd ask them we'd tell them about it, but we'd ask them to take their gun off of campus. That's what we would do, or store it with us at the police station. We've not had that issue, to my knowledge, in my 28 years there.
Okay. Follow up, Mr.
Wow.
Texas has a student carry policy now, from my understanding. Do you have any information as to any incidents that have taken place since that law was put into effect that caused law enforcement to get involved?
I'm not aware of any public reports on that. I've not discussed that with them, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Testament.
Good question. Earlier in your the gentleman's testimony, you said the difficulty in an active shooter situation is knowing who the perpetrator is. Is the person with a concealed carry trying to defend themselves, or is it the actual perpetrator? What's the difference between a campus and the shopping mall down here? I mean, you say that's a reason not to do it, but do you do anything differently for the shopping mall?
Well, I think it's the institution in and of itself that you have to be concerned about. We're dealing with students, adolescents. We're dealing with a situation where the students, for the most part, are untrained. We don't know that, but our expertise would tell us that the students would be untrained in regards to weapons. And my position is that I would like to know that when I put law enforcement people on a campus or anywhere in regards to responding to an active shooter situation, that they're dealing with an individual with a weapon. And if they arrive on the scene and there are multiple people that are there that have weapons, it's very difficult to decipher as to who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. And I am concerned about the escalation of damage that could take place in a situation like you mentioned.
Representative Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. Earlier you mentioned that you'd like to reserve this for licensed professionals. Could you please elaborate on what you mean by that?
In regards to a licensed professional, I'm talking to an individual who is a law enforcement officer who has been trained in the use of weapons. That is an individual that takes responsibility for any shot that is fired. As the chief mentioned, once that round leaves the weapon, we have to make sure that that weapon or that round is assigned to that weapon. And if in fact that is being discharged by an untrained individual, then there is a possibility of the escalation of the situation, and that's what we're very much concerned about.
Thank you for taking my question.
Would you have the same concern if this bill limited to age 21 and older and also required any students who were to do that to complete a full safety course that you just described so that they are equivalent to licensed professionals?
I mean, that would make a difference in the bill, and obviously that would be an improvement, but my concern is having the actual practice.
President Byrd.
Gentlemen, did you know I supplied each member of this committee with an article called Your Brain Under Fire? What goes on during an active firefight by trained police officers in contrast to the general public? It supports your testimony. Did you know that?
I was unaware.
Further questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony. Valerie Fagan. Now, just for everybody on the committee, we're past the time, but where our next bill is, President Byrd's bill, he's given me permission to start that hearing late. So.
Please stay.
Good morning, Chair, and all the representatives, and thank you for having me today. I'm a little nervous. I'm not the best speaker, but I'm really passionate about safety, number one, for all the schools in our state. And I have a letter here from a parent that I think represents the opinion of many parents that I've spoken to this past week, and I would like to read it. Her name is Deirdre Reynolds, and I have lived in Nashua, New Hampshire for 28 years, and I have a daughter that attends UNH in Durham. I oppose House Bill 1542 because it would put college students, faculty, and staff in danger and force guns onto campuses and into high-risk situations where they have no place. This bill would force the state's public universities and community colleges to allow guns on their campuses, allowing anyone who can legally possess firearms, including those without concealed carry permits and who haven't passed background checks or completed safety training, to carry handguns on the exterior grounds, which could include open-air stadiums, quads, and other places where students socialize. I do not want my daughter put in a dangerous situation or to have to think about the consequences of walking back to her dorm at night or even during the day. As a mom, I send my children to school to receive an education. I send them there thinking that they are safe. Allowing guns on campus would change that dramatically. HB 1542 is not good for our state, our community, and especially our students, and I urge you to oppose the bill.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I didn't catch your name.
My name is Valerie Fagan, and I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Constituent.
Yes.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I am.
Okay. She's your representative.
Yes,
no, I know you are my representative, but do you have a question, anybody?
We're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Deb Howard.
Yes.
Good job.
Thank you, committee, for listening to my testimony. Some of what I was going to say has already been said, so I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. My name is Deb Howard. I live in Northampton, and I'm here to oppose the bill today. As has already been said, right now the university systems are able to make their own decisions about their students and their staff safety, and we should keep it that way. This is an extreme policy and dangerous. Only one other state in our country has this kind of law. And of the few states that force guns onto college campuses, most require a permit to ensure that those who carry have background check and in some cases have additional safety training. In New Hampshire now, there is no need. We've gotten rid of permits for carrying a gun, so anyone can carry a concealed gun without a permit. So there's no training required, there's no background check, additional background check like there used to be, so this is really not a good idea at this point. Guns on campus, putting guns into it, as it was said by the chief, you know, suicide is among the leading causes of death for college-age adults, according to the American College Health Association. And binge drinking is reported by nearly half of New Hampshire college students and is above the national average. This is from a national survey on drug and health use. So adding a deadly weapon to that situation is really not a safe idea. And finally, as you know, as we've just seen, the community college law enforcement opposes this bill, including the University of New Hampshire. The New Hampshire Association of Police Chiefs is also against it, and as you already heard from Chief Paul Dean. So for those reasons, I'm asking you to vote no on 1542. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Emma Fairholm.
Thank you for this opportunity. I was just hoping to share an experience I had while an undergraduate student in Boston. So I went to Berklee College of Music, which is right in downtown Boston, and we had multiple buildings splayed out across the city. One day when I was walking from one building to a restaurant to grab lunch, I got grabbed by a homeless man into a bear hug, and I had nothing, and I couldn't do anything, and he wouldn't let go of me. I talked to public safety after, and they said they would keep an eye out for him, but they couldn't really do anything because it was a city. It was open to the public. There was no restrictions to walk down the streets or anything like that. He would stay around, he'd follow me to my apartment. I saw him multiple times, and I still see him when I go back just to visit my friends who have not yet graduated. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't ask public safety to escort me from every single building whenever I walked out of my house. I couldn't ask them to walk me to lunch every day. There was nothing I could really do. So this bill would allow someone like me to feel less helpless. I understand it's a different state, but I wanted to have an opportunity to share my experience in order for New Hampshire to not make anyone feel as helpless as I did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I never go to Massachusetts. That's one of the reasons why I went.
It was the best school for my major. I wanted to go.
I understand. Hey. Representative Penlock, is a question?
Yes.
And then
Thank you for taking my question. If you said he put his hands on you and gave you a bear hug and wouldn't let you go, the police could not arrest him?
They couldn't find him by the time I had the opportunity to talk to them. He was gone.
Okay, thank you.
Rod.
Thank you. I'm wondering what a gun would do if you really shot him.
I probably wouldn't have, but I would have felt as if there was something I could do for myself. I had nothing.
Unfortunately, if you had a firearm and you pointed it at him, you'd probably be charged with reckless conduct.
Probably.
Sometimes it's better to stay out of Massachusetts.
David, you're prejudiced.
First, I want to thank you for being brave to come and speak. I appreciate your testimony because it just lends to it. So you believe, probably as I believe, that if you had a gun and you got away from him, you could have pointed and deal with the courts later, but he would have left because you don't know what this man's going to do to you. Is that correct? And was he bigger than you?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Can I just ask follow-up? Wouldn't mace be safer? Yeah.
It wouldn't be legal.
Yeah, you can put up with this.
John Bird.
Man, did you know I used to buy this for my students? It cost $19.95. It was an LED stream constant of, this was a bear spray, but it came out in a stream, and it also had a dye. And so you use it at night and just put it right in their eyes and keep spraying. I buy this for my students who were domestic violence victims. Sam's, sell them for $19.95. Did you know that?
I did not.
Okay.
No other questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Yes, thank you. Here calls Johanna. Welcome back.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Hannon. You may remember me from around this area. Former representative. I'm also representing gun owners in New Hampshire this morning. We're in favor of this bill. And I wanted to talk about a couple minor things. First, some of you may have heard the joke, why do you carry a firearm? Because I can't carry a police officer. So, I know it's not that funny, but the idea that only a law enforcement officer can handle an active shooter situation or a personal defense situation is absurd, especially when they're not there when you need them to be there. I appreciate their efforts. They do a great job. I'm a resident of Lee. My children go in the Oyster River School District. I have a daughter at Mass Way, and my son is in the Oyster River Middle School in Durham. We spend a lot of time at the university. My son's football team practices at the fields and plays games there. We're there all the time. My wife is also someone who's been a victim of a mugging, leaving a university campus at night. I was also a victim of an attempted mugging, wasn't successful, leaving university. And I can tell you that even though the crime is very low at University of New Hampshire, it's not impossible for something to happen. It's happened to both my wife and myself. Now, if this was a classroom and someone walked in and, say, pointed a firearm at our good friend Representative Burke, there would be very little, there would be very little problems in anyone's mind about who is doing the damage there, who is the aggressor. And if anyone else in the room had a firearm, I'm sure Representative Burke would hope that you would shoot me.
I hope the people in Ways and Means aren't listening.
I understand. Now, the argument that only an officer knows how to account for their firearm and their bullets that are fired is also absurd. Every citizen who carries a firearm or uses a firearm is responsible for everything that they do. There is no difference in those instances. That's pretty much all I have, unless there are any questions.
Okay, Brett has a question.
I'd like to ask you the same question about Virginia Polytech massacre down there. Do you believe that if a student had a gun along that way of killing 133 or something like that, students, would that have made a difference down there? And is the University of New Hampshire exempt from a nut going on their campus and doing the same mayhem?
I absolutely don't believe that any place is immune from it. I don't think that we should treat the university system any differently than we treat our grocery stores, our other public places. The idea that the university system can make their own rules on firearms is absurd. I know that some may say that they are not a municipality or a locality and it doesn't apply to them, but they have their own police force. So if we're going to treat them like they can have their own police force, we should also treat them like every other public place and public and municipality and say that they can't make their own firearms laws. As far as someone coming in as an active shooter in at Virginia Tech, I don't think a firearm might have stopped the first or second victim, but I'm pretty sure the third, fourth, or the 26th would not have happened had someone with a firearm been able to use it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bird.
Did you know, sir, yesterday in the paper was this, that National Center for Disease and Control, comparing America with similar countries in the world, the cause of death from 15 to age 19 by firearm, the murder rate was 82% higher than any other country that has the same socioeconomic status and placement in the world than us.
I believe you, but I don't have any idea what that has to do with this.
Usually it does.
No, you're not.
I'm not sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Politicians.
Thank you, Honorable Johansson, for taking my question. That statistic. I believe that due to gang violence. That statistics of the murder rate being due to gang violence and not to like rank and file human beings in this country.
I'm not a trained statistician, but my doctorate is another field. I have no doubt that I've seen the literature, I've seen the studies. There is a very large percentage of the violent crimes that happen in those age groups that is associated with gang activity and other illegal activity. This is something that hasn't happened with many of the 15-year-old students at University of New Hampshire. I don't know of any. There may be, but you know, well, actually that's not true. There are people that go there from the schools. I know there are university, Oyster River students that do attend the university at times. But I don't let my middle school student carry a firearm. He's not allowed to legally. The only people that would be doing that under the age of 18 would be criminals in the first place. And anyone who is engaged in any violent activities, a school shooting or anything of the sort, is engaged in a crime. They're not worried about what the sign says at the front of the school building.
Thank you for putting Pete in that testimony.
Representative Wallace, did you have a question?
Representative Gagne, handle it.
Okay, Representative Panalakis.
Thank you for taking my question. Do you think, since there's only one other state that has this law, that this will do any damage to people being sent or going to the university?
Thank you for the question. First of all, I'm not sure it's the only state. I believe Utah also allows firearms on campuses and has for many years and has not had any incidents that I know of. And it's been a much longer period of time than the Texas change. As far as damage, I think it puts the university system and the camp and the grounds in the same danger category as my local grocery store and everywhere else in New Hampshire, pretty much, except courtrooms.
Second question.
Go ahead.
Would you, if you had received a book that said that policy was no guns on campus, would you send your children there after finding out the state made it a law that they could do it?
That they could carry?
Yeah.
I would not send my children there if they gave me that policy book saying that they couldn't have them.
No.
Are you aware of any in Utah or in Texas or any of them where they require a gun safety course for students at all? Now, I tell you, my concern is I'm from college too, and lots of drinking parties, and if there was a gun around, I'm sure we'd have shot something. But of course, we were not trained. A lot of them aren't trained. And for me, under 21, from that day, I listened to the testimony of others who were opposition to it. It seems to me that that would be a reasonable thing. But do these exist in these other states?
I don't know the training requirements in those states offhand, but as most of you know, we still do have a concealed, we still have a license in this state, but there was never a training requirement previously, if I'm correct, and there was no background check required. Is that also correct? Not a real
background check for many years.
There were? Wasn't required.
But
for purchase, but not to have a concealed license. So the fact that we've gotten rid of that license requirement makes no difference on this conversation. In Texas, like I said, I don't know the specifics about what their training requirements may or may not be, but I do know there was a study many years ago in Texas that compared shooting incidents with law enforcement officers versus concealed weapons permit carriers in that state. And police officers, I think, I'm not 100% sure, I have to check, I can get back to you with the specific data, but I think it was almost 6 times more likely to be involved in involved in a crime or have a criminal activity, so not the shooting itself. There are other studies that also show that police officers miss their targets in the shooting more often than concealed weapons permit carriers in many states. So I'll find those studies for you. I don't have them offhand, and I can get them for you if you'd like. That's it.
We'll put him to the test. Come on. No, we're a half hour over. Let's go.
I gave you permission.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. But the problem I have, how did this bill come up? You're here giving testimony in this particular bill, and how would it improve at the university at this time if this bill was to pass? What would be improved?
What would be improved?
You feel they would be safer?
I think
students at the university?
I think individuals would have the opportunity to be safer if the need arose. It is a very safe campus currently, but like we heard Representative Byrd said, that this can happen, an incident can happen anywhere. You can be a victim of a crime anywhere. There have been rape cases at the university, so the fact that it is a very safe place does not mean that it has not happened. And we've heard from people that we heard someone say they don't feel safe on their campus. I understand that's the OC spray or some kind of pepper spray or mace may be an option for those people. I'd like to remind everybody that there's no training requirement for that either. You may spray some innocent bystander with the pepper spray. And who knows? These things can happen no matter what the method.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get you off the hook.
Thank you.
Ralph Matthews. Mr. Matthews, before you begin, I want to ask a question of Mr. Dean. At the university, how would you rate the three problems? Alcohol, drugs, or firearms? Which one would...
Alcohol's number one. It's in that order. Firearms wouldn't even be next on those lists. Theft and burglary, domestic violence. Those things are higher. Firearms, it is
okay.
non-existent.
I was just kind of curious about that.
Question, please.
Thank you for your candid response.
Folks over there in the corner, there's room over here in this corner, so you have to squeeze all the way in. You can walk around and be over there in that corner.
I don't have the gun. And your name is?
Yeah, Wayne Burke, Representative Wayne Burke.
I don't have it. I haven't seen it.
I got it. He got it because I gave it to, I have a witness.
I saw it go by. I did see. Yeah, that's it.
Delmar cited it.
No, he's gonna like my bill.
You don't have it. I'll call you next.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Matthews, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ralph Matthews. I live in Bow, New Hampshire. I'm a physician and currently a full-time student at the University of New Hampshire, and I'm here in support of the bill. I feel that not only does the current restriction as it stands restrict my personal liberty, it also places me in a potentially vulnerable situation where I may not be able to protect myself given the opportunity to do so. Furthermore, it's incredibly inconvenient as a practical matter to travel to and from one's vehicle to avoid carrying your firearm on campus. And personally, I feel that it's a security issue in terms of leaving my firearm in my truck as opposed to having it on my person where I'm in control of it. So, for those reasons, I support the bill, and I feel that as an educated professional and a person who's been licensed to carry in other states and received firearms training, there's really no reason why my personal right to carry should be restricted on a university campus or at a shopping mall or anywhere else for that matter. So I genuinely appreciate you guys considering this bill. I will just add, I think that in 2015, Montana also passed a campus carry law. Someone should fact check to be certain, but I believe that's been in place for a couple of years now. And also, for anyone who's interested, there's a great book by author John Locke called More Guns, Less Crime. And it points to a lot of the data behind the statistical sources that people are discussing. And it also highlights the fact that the majority of times there's a mass shooting. The perpetrator, who is undoubtedly a coward, they tend to attack in places that are considered gun-free zones because they're aware that no one there will be able to defend themselves. And I think that that's another reason why a university campus should not necessarily be designated as a weapons-free zone. Thank you.
All right. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I apologize for that. I just don't know what happened to the guy. It didn't reach this spot.
Something the fire is. I'm Representative Wayne Burton. I represent the town of Durham, and I vote as the state representative of the town council, and we are absolutely opposed to this bill. I live a mile from the center of campus, and the last thing I want is 14,000 drunken students having guns in their rooms. I'm also one of the only people in this building that's actually seen what happens when there's an active shooter, what people thought there was in a college campus. My campus, I was president of North Shore Community College for 13 years. And by the way, I had one of the highest minority populations in the state, including gang members. We have no problem with gang members. The problem with the shooters right now, they come from rich families, not from socioeconomic levels. And I think it's almost racist to suggest that it does. Our system malfunctions. And a voice came out in the building saying, an active shooter is in the building. This is not a drill. Take appropriate action. You know what happened? Everybody reached for their cell phone. Everybody in the building. I had 6 police departments and the state cops there within 5 minutes, and it was mayhem. Now, the trick in an active shooting situation, we were trained, is that you leave the building to get away from the shooter, or you barricade it to close to the shooter. We did drills at my campus all the time. My staff did exactly what they were supposed to do. They barricaded themselves in rooms, and the rest of them fled the building. Now, a couple of people got hurt getting out the windows and so forth. Meantime, we had 2 massive traffic jams trying to get off campus. Again, everybody's on their cell phone. The trick to an active shooter is you gotta know where the shooter is. Because if you don't know where the shooter is, how do you know whether to flee or to barricade? And that was the dilemma we had. If there had been guns on we didn't allow guns on our campus, and I should show you the weapons that were turned in. I did pictures of them. Incidentally, one time my life was threatened with murder. It was on the wall of a men's room. I was helping the black students on campus, and somebody took exception to that. I never wore a gun, and I wouldn't wear one then. We had a cop in the building. We didn't shut down. If I have to arm myself to be a college president, I'd leave the army. A couple of things. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I notified parents when their kids were shot by accidental discharge. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I was a legal officer in Vietnam. We did court-martials for people who had accidental discharge. We're talking about trained veterans shooting their friends because they start twiddling with their guns and they forgot to look in the barrel to find out if there was a round still in it or not. Durham now has the best police coverage. Paul Dean is fantastic. Chief Dave Kurtz, 22 years. Paul, 23 years. We have the safest campus in the country under the current protocols we have in place on my campus, on their campus. Why you want to change that is on me. Arrests have dropped this year by 20–30% because of, and there's been no complaints. And I think that the cost of this bill would be enormous, both to the town and the university. Millions of dollars, because Paul has to cover, what, 40, 50 buildings? And the town has to cover the rest of the town. The other thousands of students. And we have 2,000 students living down the I can tell you, if I asked Paul and Dave to come up with a budget to account for the fact there'd be open concealed carry on campus, it would be enormous. As you can imagine, we'd have to, I don't know, we'd have to have cops in every building, I think, to police these folks. Arrests are down, but non-student arrests are up. This is the age of multimedia. You can't believe how fast you can get a party now on campus in Durham. You go on Facebook and you say there's a party in Stoke Hall, you might get 200 students from UNH and another 50 to 100 from off campus, right, Paul? And how do you regulate that? You allow them to come on campus with their weapons? I'll close with this. 8 years ago, a staff member at the North Shore came to me because his son, a Marine in Iraq, was arrested for murder. He'd come back from patrol and picked an AR-15 out of the rack that was supposed to be clean. They were playing with the weapons in the comm center. He pointed the weapon at his best friend, pulled the trigger, and blew his head off. This is a trained Marine, because a young second lieutenant coming in from the States, as you all know, because you're a veteran, when you inspect a weapon, you take it and you look down the barrel, right, to make sure there's no around in the
From the
chamber.
breach end.
Well, even in the military. Now, can you imagine a bunch of students coming back from a bender downtown, start playing with a weapon in one of their dormitory rooms? If one student dies because of this legislation, the legislature has let the people of New Hampshire down. I thank you very much for your time, and thank you for taking my...
Thank you. And again, I made out a card for you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Representative Chaparro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you aware of any in Montana, Utah, the other places where it's allowed, where they're at, that has occurred?
I'm sorry?
You mentioned about a situation where drunk students come back and play with a firearm.
Yeah.
And then mayhem, something bad happens. Are you aware of incidents that have occurred in the places where we're legalizing in the other 3 states? Can you cite any instances where that's occurred?
I have no information to that effect, Representative.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
There's other questions.
Adam?
And then I know Rep. Wallace.
House Bill 350 prohibiting the possession of a firearm at a polling place, and there was, I'm not sure, that's the question, and you didn't have a police exception, so it died in flames. I'm not sure if I remember this right. You have to help me out. Weren't you a captain in the Marines when you were in Vietnam? And you had the combat infantry badge. Don't you have some other decorations?
Yeah, you know, I was going to wear them today, and I lost the coupling on the back.
What were they?
3 bronze stars.
Oh, thank you. That was my question. And is this, so you can see my question, because we have people who are Walter Mitty's. You know? Thank you.
I was civilian. I can tell you when I became an anti-gun safety, a Vietnamese kid stole the camera off my Jeep. And I pulled out my .45, which I shot expert in. I aimed it at the back of his head, knowing that if I had blown that kid's head off and retrieved my camera, my unit would get credit for kill. That's the way it worked, and then I found out. Something clicked in my head. It's only a camera. And I holstered my gun, I never fired it again, although my men did. And I saw the bodies from accidental, and that's why, and I'm sorry, that's my experience, that's what happened. And I'm not going to let anybody back me down because I refuse to wear a weapon. That's not my choice. Now, you folks have your own choice. I just wish that we'd know who was carrying guns so I know how to get away from them if they're an active shooter in Repsol. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I should have written my card bigger or something. But,
well, I don't know what happened to it. Somewhere along the line, they got this place.
It got this far.
Thank you. If I pray nothing ever happens in Rep Hall, but I would run away from me then. But with that said, you said that rich kids are shooters. I was wondering if you could elaborate what that means, because there's apparently there's a bunch of drunk rich kids over in UNH. But let me finish if I could.
Sure. But
rich kids are shooters, and do you believe that minorities can be rich kids? Because there are a lot of minorities that are shooters.
Please, Representative, please don't assume what I meant to say.
Well, that's what I want to
clarify.
clarify.
There was a remark that I think Representative Gang, I'm not sure what you meant by it, that shooters tend to come from gangs. And all I was responding to was that I was watching Sandy Hook when it happened in my campus with my staff. And that young man was mentally confident, as Chief Dean has said, in so many cases, sometimes college students are. And that's all I was responding to. And the other thing was, I worked with the Crips and the Bloods and their derivative gangs in Lynn, Massachusetts. We pulled them out of the gangs. We had kids out trying to, because we were competing with that before. And Lynn, as you know, is the gang capital of the world. And some of those kids, once they were fine. And so that's all I was responding to.
Well, thank you for
clarifying. Please don't take my remarks and generalize about it.
Okay. No, I appreciate you clarifying.
Lynn, City of Sin, is that correct?
Yank you out, wheel you in there. Yeah, you know what? It's a wonderful city, minority-majority city. I had the flags of the countries of origins of my students in my gym. I ran out of space at 120.
Wow.
45 languages spoken. It was fantastic.
Interesting. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Last guy, Ian Freeman. He's been patient.
Pretty good at that. Ian Freeman, one of the co-chairs of the New Hampshire Liberty Party. I think this is a great bill. It doesn't go far enough, in my opinion. If somebody wants to open carry a firearm on campus, they should be able to do that as well, because that's should be their freedom in the live free or die state. We've heard a lot of fear mongering from the people who oppose this bill, and all of the arguments that they use can be used to justify, and I think as Representative Testerman was referring to, prohibiting firearms everywhere else. Oh, well, you know, dangerous situations could develop at the mall. And how do you determine who's the good guy or the bad guy? Well, let's let the people figure that out for themselves. Everything's been fine in the states in which this has gone in, as it's been pointed out. No one has given a single example from Texas or Utah. If I want to carry a gun on campus concealed, as the police officer referred to earlier, they won't really know it. And so ultimately these prohibitions on carrying concealed on campus really only stop the very most law-abiding people, the people who are going to be, you know, obedient. They're going to do what they're told, and that's making campuses more dangerous. So let's let people make choices for themselves. And if people are uncomfortable with the idea that there might be weapons around them on campus, I invite them to go to college in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close the hearing on House Bill 1542.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.